I thought the cabin was beautiful when I first saw it. Warm lights glowing through frost-laced windows, fresh snow untouched except for my tracks. It felt like the kind of place meant for silence, for rest, for forgetting the world. The air was too still, but I told myself that was peace. Inside, the fire was already lit, though I don't remember striking a match. The door closed without a sound behind me. That's when I realized some places don't welcome visitors. They wait for them. They settle in quietly, waiting to see how long it takes before you understand you were always expected. Most people think Christmas Eve is magical. Soft snow, warm fires, family gathered close. I used to think that too, before last year, before the visitors. My name is Nathan Hale. I'm 34 years old, and I haven't slept very well since last Christmas Eve. Whenever anyone asks why, I tell them I have insomnia, or anxiety, or something equally mundane. The truth isn't something I should say out loud, not without sounding unhinged. But you asked for a story, and I'm tired of carrying this alone. It started on December 24th, during the worst blizzard our region had seen in decades. I'd rented a remote mountain cabin for the holidays, one of those rustic log places advertising tranquility, solitude, and an authentic old-world Christmas atmosphere. I thought a quiet holiday alone might help me reset, or maybe I was just hiding from the world after a brutal breakup. The cabin itself stood miles from the nearest town, no neighbors, no traffic, just a dark forest and endless hills of white snow. When I first arrived that morning, the snow was already knee-deep and falling in thick curtains. The wind howled, rattling the porch railings like someone kicking at the slats. I should have taken that as a sign. But I was stubborn. I always have been. I unloaded my bags, shoved wood into the old iron stove, and by afternoon the place was warm enough to remove my coat. I drank hot cider while watching the storm through the frosted windows. It felt almost peaceful. Then, sometime after sunset, the peace began to unravel. It started with the smell. At first, it was subtle, like wet fur and pine sap drifting in from the door. I figured it was a draft mixing with the scent of the Christmas tree I'd brought that morning. But the smell grew stronger, sour, tinged with something musky and animalistic. Then came the scratching. Barely audible at first, faint, rhythmic scrapes along the siding, moving from the door to the windows. I remember standing frozen by the fireplace, listening, waiting for it to repeat. It did. Scratch. 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 Weirdest of all, though, the sound came from low to the ground, too low for a person. I considered the possibility of animals, maybe mice, but something about the pacing felt deliberate, almost investigatory, like whatever was out there was searching for an entry point. I told myself not to panic. The storm made everything sound stranger than it was. I checked the locks, tossed another log onto the fire, and tried to distract myself with an old novel I'd brought along. But the scratching kept returning, sometimes directly behind me on the opposite side of the wall, and each time it did, the fire seemed to dim a little, almost as if the flames recoiled. By 8 o'clock, I decided I needed to pour myself a stiff drink. It was only after I had the first glass of whiskey down that I gathered the nerve to open the front door. Just a crack, mind you, I'm not a complete idiot. The cold slapped my face instantly, and snow plowed in over my boots. I leaned out, a lantern in hand, expecting to see claw marks in the fresh snow. But there were none. Not a single track. The area around the porch was pristine, unbroken white, which meant the noises weren't coming from outside. They were coming from inside the walls. I slammed the door shut, bolted it, and backed away. The cabin creaked and groaned as the wind assaulted it, but the interior felt unnervingly still. The fire hissed, the wood crackling sharply, like it too was nervous. Then I heard footsteps above me, slow, dragging. The cabin had a small attic, accessible only by a pull-down ladder in the hallway. I hadn't stored anything up there. The listing had said the attic was empty except for some old insulation and a few boxes of abandoned decorations. Yet something heavy moved across the floorboards overhead. Thump. Drag. Thump. I grabbed the fireplace poker because it was the closest thing resembling a weapon and edged toward the hallway. Another thump, loud this time. Then a giggle. A child's giggle. My blood froze. I had no children. No one should have been within miles of that cabin. The laughter continued, soft, breathy, almost playful. Then the footsteps resumed, but now they approached the attic entrance directly above my head. Before I could decide whether to run or scream, the attic ladder unfolded on its own, slowly, one creaking segment at a time. Wood groaning, hinges screeching. I watched it descend, my breath shallow, poker raised uselessly. At last, the ladder touched the floor, and everything went silent. The space above was pitch black. The lantern by the door cast weak yellow light into the opening, but not enough to reveal anything beyond the first few rungs. Then something began to descend. Not quickly, not even cautiously. It came down step by step as though it wanted me to hear every tiny sound it made. A small hand, pale as wax, wrapped around the rung. Another followed. And then a face emerged from the void. A girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing an old-fashioned winter dress trimmed with lace. Her long hair hung in damp strands, and her eyes were wide, blue, and glassy, like marbles pressed into dough. Her lips were almost purple. She smiled at me, revealing a mouth full of little yellow-white teeth. "Are you alone?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sweet like a child's. It was hollow, echoing slightly, as if spoken through a tunnel. I stepped back, raising the iron poker. She giggled again. "You don't have to be scared. I was alone too." "Stay where you are," I croaked, barely able to speak. The girl blinked slowly. Her skin shimmered faintly like frost catching the light. "It's Christmas Eve," she whispered. "We came to visit." "Who's we?" I asked uncertainly. She tilted her head and spoke eerily. "The others." I remember the exact moment I lost whatever composure I had left. It was when she lifted her hand and pointed at the window behind me. "They're here." I spun around and saw faces pressed to the glass. 4, 5, 6, maybe more. Small, pale faces with huge dark eyes staring in, smiling with those same too many teeth. I dropped the poker. The girl at the ladder giggled louder. "Don't worry, we like playing upstairs." She began climbing back up, vanishing into the darkness of the attic. When she reached the top, she looked down at me one last time. "Come find us," she whispered. Then the hatch slammed shut with tremendous force. I ran. Some people say adrenaline makes you brave. It doesn't. It makes you stupid. I barricaded myself in the bedroom with a chair under the knob and crawled under the blankets like a terrified child. Every part of me was shaking. My breath was embarrassingly loud. Even I wanted to tell myself to quiet down. Outside the bedroom door, the cabin creaked more than before. I heard rapid scurrying, like multiple small feet running across the floors and walls. Occasionally, a burst of giggles would echo through the hallway. Then the music started. It sounded like a warped version of a Christmas carol being played through an old phonograph. Notes slowed, dragged out, stretched unnaturally. The melody vaguely resembled Deck the Halls, but was wrong in almost every possible way, as if composed by someone who had only ever heard the song while submerged underwater. The singing that accompanied it was worse. High-pitched voices, childlike, many of them, all singing slightly out of tune. Fa la 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 la. The final note slid downward into something guttural, almost growling. I stuffed my fingers in my ears. It didn't help. The song felt like it wormed its way inside my skull. Each verse was louder, more distorted, more discordant than the last. I don't know how long the singing lasted. Time twisted strangely in that room. The storm outside raged, rattling the windows hard enough to shake my teeth. At some point, the music must have stopped. Then came the knocking. Not at the door, from under the bed. 3 slow taps, measured, almost polite. Tap, tap, tap. A child's voice whispered, "Can I come out?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Small fingers slid around my ankle. I screamed and kicked, rolling off the bed and fumbling for the flashlight on the nightstand. I flicked it on and shone it beneath the bed frame. Nothing. Just undisturbed dust. But the fingers had definitely been there. My skin still tingled where they'd touched. I scrambled back to my feet, panting. The knocking resumed, now from the closet door instead. Tap, tap, tap. A different voice this time. Older, male, raspy. "Let us visit you." I pressed my back to the wall, flashlight trembling in my grip. The doorknob began to turn. I bolted for the window. It was old, but not bolted shut, and I threw it open, letting a blast of freezing air and snow hit me. I climbed onto the windowsill, intending to drop into the snowbanks below, but as I lifted my leg through the opening, I heard something behind me. The bedroom door latch was clicking open. Then a voice, many voices layered together, breathing my name. "Nathan." I jumped. The snow broke my fall, but I landed badly, pain shooting through my ankle. The wind roared around me. I forced myself to stand, limping, heart pounding. I didn't dare look back at the cabin. I half ran, half stumbled through the snow toward the line of trees. I knew the forest was dangerous in the storm. I knew that, but staying meant death, or maybe something worse. Behind me, I heard the cabin door creak open. Something stepped out onto the porch, but no footsteps followed. Only soft laughter drifted over the wind. I kept moving until the cabin was no longer visible whenever I glanced behind me, swallowed up by the swirling white. But I wasn't alone. Not for a second. The woods were a nightmare of bending pines and waist-high snow. My flashlight flickered weakly. The cold bit through my coat like knives. Every second, I expected those pale figures to emerge between the trunks, but instead, the forest gave me something new to fear. I noticed it when I stopped to catch my breath. The sound of tinkling bells. Faint, fragile, yet unmistakable. At first, I thought it was the wind catching icicles, but the bells formed a rhythm, a deliberate pattern, like someone shaking a set of tiny Christmas sleigh bells slowly, methodically. The melody drifted through the trees in gentle waves. Jingle, 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 jingle. It seemed to grow louder whenever I moved deeper into the woods. I tried calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" The bells immediately stopped. Silence swallowed the forest. And then, jingle, 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 right behind me. I spun around, my flashlight shaking violently. The beam slashed across the trees, illuminating only snow and branches. No movement, no footprints except mine. But then I felt something warm brush against the back of my neck. I whirled around again. Nothing. The bells started up once more, this time circling me, faster, closer. The rhythm grew frantic, no longer melodic, but urgent. Jingle, 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 jingle. A whisper threaded through the sound. Find us. I stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen branch. I hit the ground hard, breath knocked from my chest. The bells rose to a fever pitch, and then everything went silent. The beam of my flashlight landed on something half buried in the snow, just a few feet ahead. A lantern, identical to the one the attic girl had carried. Its glass was cracked, the metal frame was rusted, and yet it glowed faintly, emitting a soft orange light. I crawled toward it despite every instinct screaming not to. The lantern's flame flickered as I neared, though there was no longer a breeze strong enough to disturb it. Attached to his handle was a small tag, a name handwritten in beautiful cursive. My own, Nathan Hale. My blood chilled deeper than the winter air. Behind me, soft footsteps pressed into the snow, many of them, surrounding me in a tightening circle. I grabbed the lantern and ran. By some miracle, I stumbled onto a narrow path cutting through the woods. The trees thinned out enough for me to see a dim light ahead, a cabin or shed of some sort. Desperate, I limped toward it. A wooden sign above the door read, "Caretaker's Outpost, established 1884. I pounded on the door. "Please, let me in, someone—" The door swung open before I finished. A man stood inside, elderly, weathered like sun-bleached leather. Thick beard, flannel coat, boots caked with snow. His eyes were startlingly blue and sharp as ice. "Get in," he said simply. I did. He shut the door quickly and slid a heavy steel bar across it. "Jesus," I gasped, collapsing onto a wooden bench. "There's something out there. Children, things, whatever they are, they're following me." "I know," the man replied. I stared at him. "You know?" He nodded slowly and sat in a carved rocking chair facing the door. "Been expecting you." That froze me. Expecting me? Why? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured to the lantern I carried. "That ain't yours." "No," I admitted. "I just found it." "Then they've marked you," he drawled. I swallowed hard. "Who are they?" He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You ever hear of the Yule children?" I shook my head. They're older than Christmas, he said, his voice low. Older than this forest. Used to be human, or so the stories say. Lost in a storm on Christmas Eve long, long ago. Never found their way home. Cold turned them into something else. Something hungry for warmth. I shivered. They're ghosts? Not quite, he said slowly, as if unsure. Ghosts leave the living alone if you leave 'em be. These ones, he shook his head, they want company. I whispered, they want me to come find them. Hey, that's how they lure folks. They play, they laugh, they sing. Once you join their games, you don't come back. Has this happened to other people? I asked incredulously. He sighed. I've buried more visitors than I care to count. The fire crackled behind him. Outside, the wind howled. I stared at the steel-barred door. So we just wait here until morning, I asked? His jaw tightened. Morning doesn't matter. What do you mean? They don't stop at sunrise, not anymore. My stomach dropped. Then what do we do now? He motioned toward the lantern. We break the mark. They can't take you unless it's intact. How? Before he could answer, something slammed into the cabin wall, hard enough to shake the shelves. The caretaker stood, cursing under his breath. They found us. Second impact struck the door like a battering ram. Then a child's voice crooned from outside. Let us in. More voices joined in unison. Let us in. Let us in. The caretaker grabbed a rifle from under his chair. They can't get through that metal bar, he said, though I heard uncertainty in his tone. But they'll keep trying. We need to hurry. He reached for the lantern, but the moment his fingers brushed it, the flame inside flared, burning bright blue. He recoiled. Damn! What does that mean? I whispered. They're close. Too close. The walls shook again, this time from multiple angles. The children outside giggled. And then something whispered directly into my ear. Nathan, open the door. I screamed and spun around. No one was behind me, but I wasn't imagining it. The caretaker looked at me with grim understanding. Once they learn your voice, they can speak through the cracks, he said. Don't listen, don't respond, and don't open that door no matter what they promise. My breath came ragged. How do we destroy the mark? He hesitated. You won't like it. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Tell me anyway. Well, you'll have to walk back to where you first heard the bells, he said. They only mark you once you accept the lantern. Return it there, extinguish the flame, and speak your true name aloud. My true name? I almost laughed. The idea seemed absurd, ritualistic nonsense. But the voices outside were still chanting my name, and something inside me knew he was telling the truth. But I can't go out there, I said. They'll follow me immediately. I'll distract them, he said simply. Before I could protest, he grabbed his rifle and threw open the back hatch of the cabin, a small door I hadn't noticed. Cold wind blasted in. You run, he ordered. Don't look back, don't stop, and don't answer 'em. Then he stepped outside and vanished into the storm. I was left alone. The children outside stopped laughing. Then they whispered in unison, He's leaving. I bolted. A force swallowed me again. Branches whipped my face, snow stung my eyes. Every breath burned like fire. The lantern swung wildly in my hand, its flame flickering frantically inside the glass. Behind me, I heard the children pour into the woods. Dozens of tiny footsteps pattering across the snow, though I saw no shapes, no shadows, nothing but swirling white. Then came their voices. "Faster, Nathan. Come play with us. We can see you." Their laughter echoed between the trees like a twisted carol. Jingle, jingle, jingle. The bells returned, louder this time, surrounding me. I was losing my sense of direction. Every tree looked the same. The storm erased my footprints instantly. I forced myself to keep moving, relying on memory, on instinct, to find the place where I'd first found the lantern. I stumbled multiple times, my injured ankle throbbing with each step. At one point, I fell face first into the snow, the lantern skidding out of my grasp. I lunged after it, fingers numb and trembling. The children's voices grew closer. "Don't run, Nathan. You'll fall again. We'll catch you." Their giggles became shrill, broken, animalistic. I lifted up the lantern. Its flame pulsed blue and white, reflecting off the snow like a beacon. Through the blur of snowflakes, I finally recognized the twisted pine tree where I'd first heard the bells. The ground around it was disturbed, as if many small feet had danced there. I staggered forward toward the spot. The wind screamed. My lungs felt like they were collapsing. The children's footsteps were right behind me now. "Return it," one hissed. "Give it back," another cooed. I dropped to my knees in the snow, placed the lantern at the base of the tree, and whispered, "My name is Nathan Hale." The flame surged. I repeated it louder. "My name is Nathan Hale." Behind me, the children shrieked, an inhuman wail that vibrated through the trees. I shouted it one last time, forcing the words through chattering, fear-stricken teeth. "My name is Nathan Hale." The lantern exploded. A shockwave of heat blasted outward, knocking me back. The world flashed white, and then everything went silent. When I woke, I was lying on my back, snow falling gently around me. The storm had stopped. A pale pink glow painted the sky. Christmas morning. My head throbbed. My limbs felt like lead, but I was alive. I sat up slowly, looking around. The forest was empty. No footprints other than my own, no bells, no laughter. No pale faces peering from the trees. The lantern was gone. No shards, no remnants, nothing. I wanted to believe it had all been a nightmare, but the bruise marks on my ankle where the fingers grabbed me said otherwise. I limped out of the woods, following the rising sun until I reached a plowed road. By afternoon, I'd hitched a ride back to town. The authorities found the cabin later that day. They did not find the caretaker. His outpost cabin was empty, dust-coated, abandoned for decades. They insisted I must have met a hiker, or a squatter, or a drifter. No one believed me. Not about the voices, the children, or the lantern with my name on it. I didn't push it. What would be the point? But I didn't leave empty-handed. When I returned to my car, something sat on the passenger seat. A small brass bell, old, rusted, engraved with the words, "We'll visit again." I kept the bell hidden in a drawer for months, convincing myself it meant nothing. but every time I touched it, it felt warm, impossibly warm. And as December began to approach again, the warmth grew. On December 22nd, the bell began to ring on its own, softly at first, then louder. On the night of December 23rd, I woke to giggling outside my apartment window, 6 stories up. Last night, December 24th, I heard footsteps in my hallway. Today is December 25th, Christmas Day. The bell rings constantly now, vibrating the entire drawer. I don't know how long I have before they come inside, before the attic girl returns, before the visitors ask me to play again. I'm writing this as quickly as I can, but my hands are shaking. I can hear the scratching at the door, low to the ground, rhythmic, deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. They're whispering my name again. Nathan. They've found me. If anyone reads this, no, it's too late for warnings. They're already here. The doorknob is turning. The bell is ringing louder. The voices, oh God, they're inside.